and soberly, because this is not a small oversight. 3 Arab scholars in 3 major historical texts, all academically translated and available in university libraries, all documenting Hebrew communities in West Africa, and yet this information does not appear in standard high school history curricula in the United States. It does not appear in most university African history survey courses. It does not feature prominently in mainstream documentaries about either Jewish history or African history. That is not an accident of neglect. That is a structural pattern, and it deserves to be examined as such. The dominant narrative of Israelite history, as it has been constructed and institutionalized over the past 2 centuries, places the origin and continuity of the Hebrew people primarily in the Middle East and, following the diaspora, in Europe. The Ashkenazi Jewish communities of Eastern Europe became, in the Western academic and political framework, the primary inheritors and representatives of that identity. The State of Israel was established in 1948 on the basis of that lineage claim, and the entire political and legal architecture of that state, including its law of return, its citizenship frameworks, and its national identity discourse, rests on a specific genealogical and historical argument about who the true descendants of the ancient Hebrews are. Now, introduce into that framework 3 Arab scholars from the medieval period documenting that Hebrew tribes were living in West Africa, and then connect that to the fact that tens of millions of West Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic between the late 1400s and the mid-1800s. That combination does not fit comfortably into the dominant historical narrative. It raises questions that the existing institutional frameworks are not designed to answer, and things that do not fit the dominant narrative do not tend to appear in the textbooks that the dominant narrative produces. I want to be precise here, because precision matters. I am not describing a secret, coordinated conspiracy of individuals sitting in a room deciding to suppress a document. What I am describing is something more structural and more systemic, the way that institutional knowledge systems reproduce themselves by including what reinforces existing frameworks and marginalizing what challenges them. Al-Muqaddimah has been translated into English. Franz Rosenthal produced a major 3-volume English translation published by Princeton University Press in 1958. It is available in university libraries across this country. Scholars know it exists, but the specific passages about Hebrew communities in West Africa are not highlighted, not integrated into African history courses, and not discussed in mainstream conversations about Israelite dispersal or Black Hebrew identity. And there's an additional dimension to this worth noting. In various years since the 2000s, the Israeli government's legal frameworks around the law of return and genetic verification for immigration eligibility have been contentious, specifically when African-descended Jewish communities are involved, including the Ethiopian Beta Israel community, whose recognition has been a prolonged and politically complicated process. If the Arab historical record documenting Hebrew communities in West Africa were widely taught and publicly integrated into mainstream historical understanding, the implications for those legal and political frameworks would be significant. That is not a small thing, and I think the silence around al-Bakri, Ibn Khaldun, and al-Makrizi reflects in part the weight of what they would mean if they entered broad public consciousness. So here's my question to you. Do you think the exclusion of this information from standard history education is intentional, structural, or a combination of both?